code reads, sex is like math. You subtract the clothes, add the bed, divide the legs, and pray you don't multiply. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Open Conversations with Ella. Tonight, we have something very juicy for you. But before I delve into my topic for tonight, I'm going to go on a short break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about something very, very juicy. Stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Open Conversations with Ella. I would like to say that this show is rated 18 because on here we'll be talking about anything and everything. And I would like to say that parents watching, students, please ensure anybody watching this show is above 18 years old. Now, tonight we'll be talking about sex and mental health. Sex and mental health. I'll be focusing on how does mental health affect our sexual lives? How does mental health affect our sexual life? In this part of the world, it's common for us to not give a lot of attention to our mental health. When we're sick, we have something in our bodies, we go to the hospital, we see a doctor, we take medications and things like that. But when it comes to our mental health, a lot of people tend to neglect their mental health because it's not something you can see, it's not something you can touch. It's something inside, it's within you. And that's why a lot of people don't give attention to our mental health. And our mental health affects 80% of our lives, of our general well-being, our moods and our emotions. Now, some people might be wondering, what is mental health? Simply put, mental health is being in a positive state of mind and body. It's that simple. Being in a positive state of mind and body where you can manage your emotions. That is mental health. It's your ability to manage the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you react towards people, your community, or your environment. That's mental health. It's simple, and it's something you can't touch. It's something you can't really explain, but you can describe the feelings. It's something you can't. It's not tangible, but it's very, very real, and that's why most people don't give much attention to their mental health. Now, tonight we're talking about how does your mental health affects your sexual life. Now, a poor mental health is simply being in a poor state of mind. When you're in a poor state of mind, it means you have a poor mental health, such that you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage the way you think, you can't manage the way you feel, you can't manage the way you react to people, your community, and your environment. I'm going to give this example. Now, imagine you have a wife and she goes to work and she has some issues at work. She comes back home. The children are giving her some issues. She has to cook, she has to clean, she has to take care of her husband, she has to do all those things. At the end of the day, it becomes very impossible for someone with a poor mental health to manage all of this with her sexual lives. At the end of the day, the husband might think she's not sexually attracted to him, or she's having an affair outside of her marriage, or she doesn't like sex at all. But what the husband fails to understand is that the wife has been going through a lot of mentally draining activities within the day, and that has affected her sexual lives. Now, someone might be asking me, what is the relationship between my mental health and my sexual life? I don't know how those two correlate. Now, it is very important to understand that everything in our lives starts and ends in the mind. Now, when the mind is not stable, every other thing about your life becomes unstable, whether we like it or not. Even the Bible says it. The Bible says, guard your mind with all diligence, your heart, which refers to your mind, with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. Now, God was not a fool to caution us about our minds, or in some places in the Bible, it says our hearts. Now, if you cannot protect or guard your mental well-being, every other area in your life is going to suffer. Every other area in your life is going to suffer. So there is that correlation between our sexual lives, our physical lives, our health, every other thing ties to our mental well-being. If your mind is not okay, you see most people, when you're depressed, you cannot study. Now, a poor mental health leads to a lot of mental health challenges like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar. All of those mental health challenges affects you in one way or another, and it affects your sexual lives. There is no way a depressed person can be in a mentally stable mood and enjoy sex. It can't happen. Well, from what I know, from the research we have done, my team and I have done, there is no way someone suffering from anxiety can comfortably enjoy their sexual life without having some kind of issues. There is no way you will have a bipolar problem or post-traumatic stress disorder. It simply means you have gone through after stress disorder. That's what post-traumatic stress disorder means. It means you've gone through a traumatic experience, and the effects of this, the experiences or the incident is still playing in your mind. For example, maybe you had an accident and you're finding it difficult to get over the accident. Maybe you were raped and you're finding it difficult to enter into a relationship or to have a boyfriend or to have sex. That is the relationship between our sexual lives and our mental health. Everything starts from the mind. If your mind is not at peace, if your mind is not stable, if you're in a state where you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage the way you think, you can't manage the way you react, you can't manage the way you cope with people around you, your community around, there is just no way you can manage your sexual life in a poor mental state. Now, before I move forward, I would like to say that our lines will be opened very soon so that you can send in your contributions. I would love to hear from the doctors in the house. I would love to hear from pastors. I would love to hear from parents, married people, single people. I would love to hear from anyone that has gone through any kind of mental challenge whatsoever. So the number is 678028885. 678028885. And I repeat, 678028885. Now, like I was saying, mental health or being in a positive mental health, it's very important. Now, someone might be asking me why a lot of people, especially guys, from statistics, you understand that some people might be saying, okay, does it mean that what of guys who are always in the mood, does it mean that guys don't go through mental challenges or guys are always in a positive mental state? No. Biologically, men are easily aroused than women. Now, a man does not really need anything to spike his arousal for sex before having sex. A man just needs to see maybe a nude picture of a woman and he's aroused. A man just needs to be kissed or touched in some his private part and he's aroused. A man just needs to see a woman naked and he's aroused. A man does not necessarily need something too tangible for him to be in the mood. But for women, it is not the same thing. For women, it is not the same thing. And I would like to point out that men are analytical beings, women are emotional beings. Now, because men are very analytical, there is no way a man will have a quarrel with his friend in the office and then brings it to the house, or let that quarrel with his friend affect his sexual life. But women are not like that. Women will argue, they will fight, they will carry the argument and the fights or the stress within their day, bring it to the house, tell their husband, and it affects them. Because women are so emotional, they are liable to be in a poor mental state. I am not saying that men are not in a poor men don't get in a poor mental state, but I'm saying that because men are analytical beings, they tend to manage their emotions very well. They tend to manage their emotions more than women. They tend to manage their emotions more than women. It's really difficult for a guy to allow his mental instability to affect his sexual life. Now, in Africa, in many parts of Africa, where mental health awareness has not been, it's not common, especially in Cameroon. Now, people, when you hear mental health, you might think that, somebody suffering from mental health is a mad person, we should change the person and all that. It's not so. People suffering from mental health challenges are not necessarily mad people. It just means that they have gone to a state where they can't manage their emotions, they can't manage the way they think, they can't manage the way they feel. Thus, it affects their lives, and in most cases, you see people taking antidepressants, you see people taking pills for depression, you see people going for counseling and things like that. Now, all of these things really plays a lot on our general well-being, on our general mood, our sexual lives, even our health. There is no way you'll be in a poor mental health state and it doesn't affect your health. Depression can lead to a lot of other things. Depression will lead you to fear, will lead you to depression. Depression will lead you to anxiety. Anxiety grows just like that, and one day you just find yourself in a mental home talking nonsense. You're talking like you're going off. People are wondering, this man don't crazy. But they don't know that it began from somewhere. It began from the little fact that you couldn't manage your emotions. You couldn't manage the way you think. You couldn't manage the way you feel. And that aggravated to you being mentally unstable. Now, there are a lot of negative effects on the effects on a poor mental health on our sex life is enormous. It's so enormous such that if we begin to reiterate, I'm going to reiterate some of the effects, what poor mental health can do to your sex life. What poor mental health can do to your sex life. It can lead to loss of your sexual desire. Of course, yes. Of course. It can lead to loss of sexual desire. You're always moody. You're always angry. You don't talk to anyone. Your boyfriend asks you, what is the problem? Nothing. Your husband asks you what the problem is. Not. And most times, it's not really your fault. It's not really your fault. Most times, it's really difficult to explain or to explain how you feel or to tell someone how you feel. Especially when you're going through a mental challenge, it becomes so difficult for you to explain. How can you explain the fact that you just sit and start crying? Maybe somebody had done something to you 3 weeks ago. When you think of it, you start crying. How do you explain that to your husband? How do you explain the fact that you've not gotten over a traumatic experience that happened to you 7 years ago? How would your husband even understand that you're going through that kind of thing if you don't even open your mouth to say that, this is what I'm going through, or this is what I went through and it's affecting me in my life? We've seen we've heard a lot of marriages crashing because of little things like this. The husband complains, my wife does not love me, her sexual drive is low, but he forgets to understand that maybe she's going through some kind of mental health challenge and she, in her part, does not even know how to communicate that to her husband. So it leads to you lose your sexual desire, you lose, you might lose your libido, you lose your sexual drive. Nothing interests you, nothing at all just interests you. You don't even find pleasure in sex, you don't find pleasure in anything, you don't just want to have sex at all. Now, the second negative effect poor mental health will have on your sexual drive is that it might lead to no sex at all. Imagine someone that has been raped before. We have seen this in a lot of people. You hear a girl saying, I don't like men, I hate men. Now, if you dig deep, you will understand that there is something behind that statement. Normally, God created man and woman, and God put desires in us, and those desires are to be enjoyed in the context of marriage. In the context of marriage, though we know people, people have sex outside of marriage. I'm not one to judge. God put those desires in us so that we might enjoy each other. Now, how can a girl just wake up one morning and say, I don't like men, I don't like sex? It cannot happen except you are bewitched, except something is wrong with you somewhere. It doesn't happen. Maybe because she was raped in her past. She hasn't dealt with that trauma. She sees every guy as a rapist. She sees sex as a bad thing because maybe the first time she ever had sex was by rape. You don't expect that kind of person to love sex. It cannot happen. That kind of person, you don't even expect that kind of person to enjoy sex. You don't expect that kind of person to like men. You don't enjoy that kind. You don't expect that kind of person to want to be married or to want to have a boyfriend. It becomes very difficult. Now, those kind of people suffering from post-trauma they have a long way to go, because first you need to accept that, okay, this thing has happened to me. Now then you need to forgive yourself and forgive your offender. Then you need to move on from there. But because mental health issues are not even talked about in our society, mental health issues are being brushed under the carpet. A lot of people suffer and die in silence. Now, a number for you to send in your contribution is 678-02-8885. 678-02-8885. 678-02-8885. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear from those who've ever suffered from any kind of mental health challenge. I'd love to hear from anybody who is currently going through a mental health challenge and is affecting their sexual life. I'd love to hear from parents. I'd love to hear from doctors in the house. And now we're going to go on a short commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to be telling you how you can improve on your mental health so that your sexual life will not suffer. Stay tuned.
My name is Fozo Oliver, and I'm the product manager for Connect You. Connect You is a social networking platform that empowers Cameroonians and Africans by helping them to make strategic connections that will take them from the life they have